Zvi. Sarah?
Hi, welcome. Rabbi Hirschfield holds a BA in history from Columbia University and did graduate work at Harvard University in medieval and modern Jewish thought. He studied at Yeshivat Har Etzion in Israel and has rabbinic ordination from the Chief Rabbinate of Israel. He was the director of Judaica at the JCC of Cleveland and an instructor at the Cleveland College of Jewish Studies for many years. He also serves as the curriculum writer and is involved in staff training for the Nisiya Institute. His wife, Dina, is a faculty member of the Hebrew University School of Public Health, and they have 4 children. Please welcome Rabbi Zvi Hirschfield.
Thank you very much. I also want to add my thanks to all the wonderful hosts. You should know that at Pardes it's known that we have to fight it out over who gets to go to Nashville because the reception here and the way you're taken care of, well, let's just say we come back feeling so important and self-impressed. It takes a while for David Bernstein at Pardes to remind us of who we really are. But I also want to add my thanks to Saul and Daniela and to Mark and Leslie and certainly to the Worthens for welcoming me and taking such good care of me. And I'd like you all to write my wife a note to let her know how you need to take care of me and so on. Since we are going live, I want to say hello to the one person I know is watching, hello to my mother. Your grandchildren are all safe and well. Okay. Before we begin, I think it's worth pausing just for a moment to think about the implications of what it means for thousands of Jews to attempt to study Torah at the same time, and the remarkable capacity for the texts and wisdom of our tradition to connect us across time and space, all different forms of Jewish practice and Jewish belief. And the privilege for me personally to be a part of all that is really quite extraordinary. I think the title and the topics of today's events remind us that what we're pursuing here is much more than just intellectual knowledge. That what we are really looking to see and explore is how the texts of our tradition can actually inform and transform our lives. So that is our goal today in this exploration of Yitro, of Jethro, who I titled as a non-Jewish hero of the Jewish people, and hopefully together we'll begin to explore why. I'm assuming everybody has a source sheet in their source packets? Or in their, yes? Okay, great. So just to give a little background for those who may not know, Yitro is Moshe's father-in-law. And we'll talk about how Moshe met his wife and how all that happened. But he is a fascinating character in that he is both Moshe's father-in-law and he is not a member of the Israelites. He is a priest of Midian. And as such, his character offers a striking model of the relationship between Jews and non-Jews in the Bible. And I think even more than that offers us a striking model for how Moshe, who we can argue was the most important and significant leader of the Jewish people, really needed some help. And if we take a look at our opening at the first text, I think we'll see even Moshe is aware of the help that he needs. Take a look at text number 1. Moshe said unto Chovav, Yitro, by the way, has many names. He's got 4 different names in the Bible. And Moshe turns to his father-in-law. They're about almost 2 years into the journey in the desert, and at this time, before the sin of the spies, they are prepared to enter the land. And Moshe offers a striking invitation to his father-in-law. He says to him, we are journeying to the place of which the Lord said, I will give to you. Come with us, and we will do good for you. The Lord has spoken good concerning Israel. So Moshe here seems to be saying, look, we're about to go into the land. Join us. Really throw your lot in with us. Take your place, make your home in the land of Israel with all of us, and it's going to be good. God's going to take care of all of us, and you're part of us, and you're part of that story. And he said to him, I will not go, but I will depart to my own land and to my homeland. Very interesting answer. After all this time, Yitro still says, you know what? I still feel more comfortable at home. You guys are nice, and the food is good, if you like man. But he says, I want to go home. And Moshe continues. So just so we see, Moshe is not just being polite. He's urging Yitro to stay. And he said, leave us not, I beg you. For as much as you know how we are to encamp in the wilderness, and you shall be eyes for us. In Hebrew, v'hayta lanu le'enayim. And it shall be if you go with us, that all the good the Lord shall do for us, the same will do for you. I did not cut off the text. The text does not give us Yitro's answer. By a show of hands, how many people here think Yitro decided to go with? Wow, one hand. Everybody thinks he's heading back to Midian. Okay, we don't get the answer, but I want to raise a question for you. Why is Moshe so insistent that Yitro come? What does it mean you'll be eyes for us? Moshe is a prophet. He speaks regularly to God. What is it he feels that Yitro brings that he doesn't have? Are there any thoughts out there? This is your big chance. Yes, ma'am. Okay, we're going to talk about that. The view of the outsider. We're going to talk about that. Yes?
It seems that Yitro may be more easily connecting with the people that Moses is going to encounter because he is more of those people than...
He knows the locals. Fascinating. He could be like this bridge figure, although the Jewish people are going to go to war with all those locals, but even so, he's got an understanding. Another suggestion out there. Yes? I see. He's got the ear of the common Israelite. I see. I sense espionage here a little bit, but okay. Yes, sir. Okay, maybe Moses is surrounded by yes men. And maybe Yitro will give him the real deal. So, yes. So you think she's found a chavruta, a theological partner with him. Yes, sir. So you think maybe Moses is hedging his bets. Interesting. Very interesting. I like all those answers. If I like them better than my own, I'm going to be in big trouble. So this issue puzzled the commentators as well. If you take a look at source 2, take a look. Rashi, the famous medieval commentator, quotes the Midrash, and he makes a suggestion. He says, it is fitting for you to join us because you know how we have camped in the desert, and you have seen the miracles and heroic deeds that have been done for us. Interesting. Yitro's a reminder. He's a reminder of all the miracles. What do we think of that answer? No one seems overly enthused. I'm also not overly enthused because I'm thinking Yitro saw what the rest of the people saw. What makes him a more valuable digital camera? Yes? We're going to talk about that, the kind of wisdom he might offer. That's true. But Rashi here seems focused in a way that Yitro's a type of witness, right? He's a witness who can confirm all the amazing things that have happened to the Jewish people. Nachmanides, in source 3, another medieval commentator, offers a very sort of practical approach. So Moses told him not to leave because he has knowledge of the desert. And he can be eyes for us, meaning he can show us the path through the desert on our way to conquering the land. Right? Now, the problem with this, of course, is the Jewish people back then had an incredible GPS. Namely what? They had God. By the way, God really knows his way. It's really quite striking. He never stops to ask for directions either. He just sort of knows. So Nachmanides also knew that part of the Bible, which is also a very interesting comment. Both of these commentators seem understandably focused on the phrase to be eyes for us. There is a sense that Yitro sees something that Moshe himself is not able to see. And with all due respect to both of these answers, I would like to explore another approach with you when we look back now together on the history that Yitro has with Moshe. If you take a look at source 4, we're going to go back in time at this point about 3 or 4 years from our opening text to look at the first encounter between Moshe and Yitro. Now this text takes place, for those who want a little refresher, after Moshe, we are told, goes out among his brethren. It is not clear in the text whether he knows he's an Israelite or not. And he responds almost viscerally to this situation of this Egyptian taskmaster beating a Jew, a fellow Israelite. And he kills the Egyptian. And then later on, he sees 2 Israelites fighting, and he intervenes. Moshe looks like a serial intervener. Can't help himself. He sees something wrong, and he throws himself into it. But as a result of that, one of the Israelites says, "Who are you to judge over us?" and mentions that the Egyptian that he killed, that the body was discovered, and Moshe runs. Moshe flees. So this is where we're picking up in this verse. Now when Paro heard this thing, that is the event of Moshe killing the Egyptian guard, he sought to slay Moshe. But Moshe fled from the face of Paro and dwelt in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian, this is a reference to Yitro, had 7 daughters. My goodness, I imagine the bathroom was always taken at his house. And they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moshe stood up and helped them and watered the flock. Now let's imagine this scene. These 7 women show up with the sheep. They're being chased away by these bullies. And Moshe, again, as we know, when he sees something is wrong, he rises up to intervene. Now notice here, take a look at what happens next. And when they came to Ruel, their father, this is also Yitro, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon?" And they said, "An Egyptian delivered us." There's an ironic twist of the phrase there. "Out of the hand of the shepherds. And moreover, he drew water for us and watered the flock." And he said unto his daughters, "And where is he? Why have you left him? Call him that he may eat bread." Now let me begin by asking, why do you think they left him there? After all, didn't he just protect them from the other shepherd bullies at the local watering hole? Why do you think they left him there? Yes? Okay, it's immodest. They can't ask him out. They have to wait for him to call. It would be inappropriate. Okay, that's certainly possible, a modesty issue. What else? Yes? They certainly don't know how the father would react. Also, what's your picture? What do we think when somebody jumps up and intervenes like that when they don't know us and they never met us before? We might be grateful, but what else might we feel? A little afraid, right? Who is this guy? He just jumps up out of nowhere and gets involved. People like that can also be a little scary. Who is this guy? He doesn't know us. He jumps up. He gets involved, doesn't introduce himself. Thank you very much, but we're going home. But Yitro doesn't have that attitude, right? He actually, I think he's admonishing his daughters. How did you leave him there? Somebody helped you, and you left him there. Call him in, and let's take care of him. Now, the next piece, we have to imagine what happened between verse 20 and 21. It says he urged Moses to dwell with him, and he gave Moshe Tzipporah his daughter. Wow, that must have been some meal. This is a striking element. Because I'm assuming, even in that culture, the idea of offering your daughter in marriage to a foreigner whom you don't know, a man who clearly has fled on his own, it's a striking moment here. Why does Yitro do that? What motivates him to do nothing less than embrace this man and make him part of his family? The daughter's reaction is to run from this guy. And Yitro's reaction is to embrace him. Yes? You're right. It's possible. The text doesn't tell us. Maybe he has long conversations with Moshe. But it's striking that the text chooses not to tell us. The way I see it, the text is almost inviting us to see Yitro in a certain light, as someone who almost intuitively or instinctively takes a chance on Moshe. Now, if you turn the page, there is a striking and beautiful midrash, I think, that is attempting to fill in this gap. Why does Yitro respond the way he does? What causes him to invite this stranger into his home, into his family, and make a place for him? Rabbi Levi said, the same staff that was created at dusk was given to Adam in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. Adam passed it on to Chanoch, who passed it to Noach, who gave it to Shem, who gave it to Avraham. You see what's happening here? There's just some magical staff. If those of you who see the movie The Charlton Heston, you have a good image of, okay, good. Yeah, Moshe was good with that thing. He trained in martial arts or something. Okay. Avraham passed it on to Isaac, who passed it to Jacob, and Jacob brought it down to Egypt and gave it to Joseph. You see what's being described here? This mythical description of this staff, which of course the text doesn't tell us about, from the creation of the universe down into the hands of the Jewish people to Joseph in Egypt. When Joseph died, his property was given to Paro's palace. Jethro was a magician in Paro's court. See, that helps fill in the story a little bit. And when he saw the staff and signs on it, he desired it. So he took it and planted it in his garden. No one was able to approach it. What's this reminding you of? The sword and the stone, right? What a beautiful mythology. That there's this magical staff, this staff that's been imbued with this special power from the time of creation, handed down generation to generation to generation, waiting. And we don't know why. It's been waiting. There's something very beautiful here. Like God from the very beginning planted the seeds of the deliverance of the Jewish people from Egypt from the creation of Adam Harishon, from Adam, the first human. So it comes into Yitro's possession, and he plants it in his garden, and no one can come near. Right? You have this image now of all these suitors coming to the home, wanting to marry Tzipporah, and they just can't. And Yitro's like, well, the staff's out there, see what you got. And I guess they come close, they get a bolt of electricity, and they disappear. When Moshe entered his house and came to the garden and saw the staff and read the signs on it, he stretched out his hand and took it. Which is where you want to hear the horns and something, da-da-da, okay? When Yitro saw this, he said, "This is the man who redeemed the Jewish people from Egypt. Thus he gave him Tzipporah as a wife." Wild story, right? We agree? Look at all they squeezed in between verses 19 and 20 there, right? You thought all Moshe did was eat bread? No, it turns out he went into the back and he read the staff and he took out the staff and he's been designated. But it seems to me the Midrash, the rabbis are responding to a problem in the text. Namely, why does Yitro behave the way he behaves? And they generate this whole backstory. And the backstory is very interesting. First of all, it positions Yitro as a friend of the Jewish people because he's holding the staff. He's waiting for the future prophet of the Jewish people to come and take it and deliver them from Egypt. It makes him look great. But the other piece is filling in this problem of what does Yitro see in Moshe that leads him to act the way he acts. So now the Midrash comes and says, oh, that wasn't a problem. There's this built-in sign. There's this built-in system. Yitro knows exactly who Moshe is because he passed the test with this mateh, with this staff. And yet it seems to me that the Midrash, although it fills in this information, in a certain way may not be doing Yitro justice. So what I'd like you to do to fill in our backstory is with the folks at your table or the person sitting next to you, take a look at source 6 and take some minutes to read it through, and then we're going to see what kind of impression of Yitro you develop and see if we can come back and answer our question as to why Moshe believes Yitro can be the eyes that he doesn't have. So take a few minutes and take a look at source 6, read it out loud with somebody at your table. We'll make our own little Nashvilleian Beit Midrash here for the next 10 minutes or so, and then we'll come back and we'll see what we discovered. Do I invite the people watching to also take a look? If you're doing this by remote, I believe the source sheet is also available to you, so you should also be studying this text, although I have no way of checking up on you. Right? Yeah. Should I say that? The text is on the website, I have been told. I'm going to go find one. I asked, no one said they didn't have. Can I trouble you for some water? Thank you so much. Huh? Another 2 minutes. And I'll come back. Are they getting itchy? They want me to come back? Oh, it's on pause right now, kind of? The what?
She said she hasn't seen any online questions.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. Anybody watching online? I'd be shocked.
She couldn't make it today, and I told her to try to find it. I didn't know how to tell her where to find it.
You can tell them now if you want. How are we doing out there? Did you guys get a chance to familiarize yourself with the story? Okay. Let's try to reconvene. Remember now, please, nobody come up with anything smarter than what I'm going to say, because I'll just go home feeling bad. All right. This chapter here is, I think, this is the essential Yitro story. This is where we learn the most about him, and I think can sort of surface an approach to, again, what is it that Yitro brought that Moshe didn't feel that he had? What are the eyes? What's the perspective? What's the capacity that Yitro has? So if we take a look at the beginning of the chapter, Yitro he jumps in because he hears, which is interesting. We're talking about Yitro's eyes, but in this case it's his ears that are important. He's the only person in the story who doesn't have a first-hand account. He didn't see the exodus from Egypt on his own. He hears about it. And he's so inspired, he decides he has to go up and, in a way, see for himself. Now, just as we pause for a minute, what happened to Moshe's wife and kids? Why is Yitro bringing them along? What does it look like happened? Yeah, it looks like he left them. Oops. You know, you can leave your cell phone. You can misplace your car keys. Yes? That's true. They are also out of the story in a way. And Yitro brings them back in. It's striking. It's not at all clear what Moshe had intended. Perhaps Moshe thinks that they're out of the story. They're not part of the people in some way. Yes? That's true, but it seems to me on the way out he had some time to send somebody for them. But you're right. It could be that just simply there's so much happening, and Moshe doesn't take them into Egypt with him, but he doesn't send for them. However it happens, Yitro here reunites the family. He's the one who is the bridge that reunites Moshe with his wife and his children. Now he comes and he shows up, and he doesn't rebuke Moshe. In fact, the opposite. Moshe goes out to greet his father-in-law, and he bows down and he kisses him, and they ask her how they're doing. And Moshe told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Paro. And take a look at verse 9. It's, in my opinion, the most beautiful verses in the Torah. Yitro rejoiced, Vayichad Yitro, for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel. Now, for me, this is a striking sentence primarily because this didn't happen to the Midianites. This didn't happen to Yitro's own people. And I think a lot of people, what is sometimes not the good people of Nashville, but those mean people on the East Coast, right? What's the reaction sometimes when we hear of good fortune happening to somebody else? What could be our reaction? Jealousy. Why didn't that happen to me? How come I didn't get to see all these miracles? How come God didn't do all this for me? How come my son-in-law got everything? Yitro doesn't have that reaction, not for a minute. He is actually rejoicing. He is personally happy for the goodness that's happened to the Jewish people. Already you see there is some capacity in this man that is incredibly unique. his ability to connect and feel joy for the other, I think really marks him as a unique individual. Now let's see what happens next. So now he's rejoicing, and in verse 12 you have like the circle is complete. Moshe now invites Yitro to eat bread with him. You have, in a way, I think, almost a closing of the circle, of the connection between these two men. And now Moshe is the host, and Yitro is the guest. And everything seems to be great. Now let's take a look. Something very interesting happens in verse 13. And it came to pass on the next day that Moshe sat to judge the people, and the people stood about Moshe from the morning to the evening. So first we get a little insight. What is Moshe spending his time on? What's he doing? Politicking, that's interesting. Counseling, judging, right? He's in charge. And believe it or not, even back then, even in the desert, apparently some Jews didn't get along with other Jews. I know it's shocking. It's hard to imagine. We have to try to close our eyes and imagine a time where Jews actually had disputes with one another. It's very hard, especially coming from Israel, to imagine such a scenario, but apparently the text tells us that such a thing occurred. And Moshe is really doing this full time. And when Moshe's father-in-law saw all that he did for the people, he said, "What is all this that you do for the people? Why do you sit alone, and all the people stand around you from morning to evening?" And Moshe said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a matter, it comes to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I teach them the statutes of God and his laws." So, first of all, we get a glimpse, at least, why Moshe is doing what he's doing. It's not simply a practical issue. Somebody has to resolve their disputes. Why is Moshe the one to resolve their disputes? What makes him uniquely qualified? He communicates with God. So in a way, this resolving of disputes is also a mechanism to instruct and teach the people the moral and ethical values that God wants to instill in the people. So Moshe says to his father-in-law, "I've got to do it. Because I'm the bridge. I'm the one that's here to educate this people and instill these values in this people. I'm the one that communicates with God. I'm the prophet. Right? I'm not just a judge. I'm a prophet." But here Yitro says something very interesting to him. And Moshe's father-in-law said to him, "The thing that you do is not good. You will surely wear away both you and this people that is with you. For the thing is too heavy for you. You aren't able to do it by yourself." What is Yitro seeing that maybe Moshe doesn't see? Yes, ma'am.
Teaching him Management 101.
And Management 101 says,
Delegate authority.
you got to delegate. You got to delegate. Now, Yitro seems to focus on, Moshe is going to wear out. It's going to be too exhausting. But I wonder if there's another point to me. Why also is it important to delegate? Mark, why is it important? Why doesn't the Federation just have Mark do everything? Mark, why not? There are 24 hours in a day.
I wish I had Yitro to come into the office and explain it to me.
We can arrange that. Why is it important to delegate? You can't do it by yourself. What else happens when you delegate? Yes, sir. You're giving other people the ability to live up to their potential. So just remember, when Mark calls you and asks you to volunteer, he's not doing it to get help. He wants you to live up to your potential. Right, Mark? There you go. So, yes, ma'am.
So it's important to figure out what you can take advantage of those talents.
Beautiful. This is a way to figure out how to take advantage and use other people's talents. Yes, ma'am.
Well, another thing in the text, he not only takes what he knows, he teaches the next level of management, and then they take it out. And so you're also doing increased education.
Absolutely. More people will know God's word done this way. But you can also imagine why Moshe might struggle with that. right? Because it's what he said to Yitro, but I'm the guy. I'm the one who communicates to God. Yes, sir.
Why is the communication in this case, Jethro, Moses, God has stepped out?
What a beautiful question. I think in this instance it seems God is saying, you've got to figure it out. You've got to figure out how you want to manage. Yes.
No, I'm talking about communication. Where's Jethro getting this from?
Jethro, if you notice, he's not acting on divine information.
Doesn't say.
It seems very clear he's acting simply on what he sees. He sees a situation where he's basically saying, Moshe, you're doing too much. I'm the only guy in the room who's able to look at this and say, you're doing too much. And we could wonder why. One woman suggested you're not using the talents and abilities of the people around you. Somebody else suggested you're missing an opportunity to educate others in a more meaningful way. Yitro himself seems to say, you're going to wear out. I'm worried about you. I see you wearing out. I'm concerned for your well-being. Maybe I'm the only one here who's looking at you and saying, I'm worrying about you, Moshe the man, whom I knew before you were Moshe the prophet, before you were Moshe the one who delivered the Jews from Egypt. I knew you when you were a shepherd in Midian. And I'm able to look at you and say, this is too much for you. Now, we could argue whether this is the right decision or not. But all of these motivations mark Yitro in a very unique way. But if you take a look at the advice, take a look at what Yitro suggested he do. He says, and Moshe's father-in-law said to him in verse 17, the thing you do is not good, you'll wear away. Take a look at 19. Listen now to my voice, I will give you advice, and God be with you. You will be for the people before God, and you will bring their causes to God. Don't worry. You're still going to be the one to be the bridge between divine will and our practice. And you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and shall show them the way they must walk, and the work that they must do. You're still going to be the leader and the educator. Yeah.
But does Yitro kind of have to enforce his credentials to say, you don't have to listen to God all the time, you can listen to me, I might have some good advice for you?
Well, it's interesting. Yitro, I guess, is saying, Moshe, you've picked a wrong strategy here. Right? I don't think he ascribes a strategy to God. I think he's saying, Moshe, you're the conduit. You have access to divine will and divine information. The question is how you're going to use it. Are you going to be the exclusive judge here, or are you going to train others? Now, Yitro's advice seems so patently obvious. The idea that delegate, it is a striking element here in the story that Moshe doesn't think of it on his own. Why do you think Moshe resists it? Because the advice seems so obvious from another Moshe. Yes?
Because it seems obvious to us because that's what we do. But at that time, that's not what they did. The person on top ran it, and however it came out. So this is a radical departure, but also the fact that he would do what his father-in-law suggested, or it might have been his father, is amazing. Because he could have thought of many reasons why it won't work. That won't work because the people won't be able to learn, or they won't. But the fact that he chose it is.
So it's interesting. On the one hand, we have good reason to suspect why Moshe would be resistant. He's the leader. Most leaders believe that they can do it better than anyone else. It's part of what motivates them. I need to be the one because nobody can do it like me. And it takes Yitro to say that's not necessarily true. Yes, sir. Yes, you. Absolutely. That's correct. Yes. He's got background. He knows maybe he knows what it's like to sit in Moshe's position. And he brings that experience with him. I want you to note, though, that I think we still haven't touched yet on the big difference between the two of them. Let's just read on a little bit, and I'll take some more comments. Look what Yitro advises him to do, and here we have to look at the text very closely. I'm going to read it in Hebrew first, verse 21, Chaf Aleph, and then we'll pick it up in English. Va'ata techazeh mikol ha'am. Now take a look at the list. He says you're going to seek out people that have the following characteristics. Anshe chayil, which means they're powerful. Yirei Elohim, they're fearers of God. Anshe emet, they're men of truth. Sonei betza, and they hate corruption. They hate bribery. And then those are the men you will place to be rulers over them in smaller and smaller groups. And then in verse 22, let them judge the people at all the time. And then when the complicated cases come up, you'll be the one they go to. Now, the criteria that Yitro lays out makes a lot of sense. Why do they have to be powerful and respected? Because we need people to listen, right? And why is it important that they fear God and they be people of truth and they hate corruption? Well, we understand. We want them to be honest, truthful, and upright. And Yitro says to Moshe, go out there and seek out those men. Now, I want you to notice carefully, because in my mind, this is the key to understanding this text. Take a look at verse 24. Moshe listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. So first of all, that's good. Moshe knows how to take advice, at least from his father-in-law, from Yitro. Take a look at verse 25. Vayivchar Moshe anshe chayil. Moses chose powerful men out of all of Israel and made them heads over the people. Wait a minute. What happened? That wasn't Yitro's list. Yitro said powerful men, but they also have to be truthful, hating corruption, fearing God. What happened to the rest of the list? Uh-oh, there's silence in the room. Yes? It might be, but that's no fun, right? You're right. It's possible, but the idea that they repeated only that one phrase is striking. In other words, by your logic, I would expect to say, just say Moshe chose men. Why go out of the way to tell me he chose powerful men, but leave everything else off the list? Yes? Yeah, the word in Hebrew, because the English was responding to the problem. But the problem in the Hebrew is there. Anshe chayil. It means powerful men. It's the same phrase as occurred up above. Yes? It does. And yet when he goes out to implement, it says he chose powerful men. Yes, sir? I understand. In the Hebrew, it's the same, right, but in the Hebrew, it's the same term. The English cheated. The English took anshe chayil from previously, and they translated up above as powerful, and here they translated as able to solve and smooth out this problem. But in the original text, the problem is present. Yes? He couldn't find them. Well, I don't understand. Yitro was able to find them. Yeah. Interesting. You know, I hear what you're saying, but it also, Moshe said the whole job of the judge is to impart God's information to the people. And the fact that he would then not want to insist on men who would be faithful to that as God-fearers is very striking. I think there's a very radical solution. He doesn't think that they exist. When Moshe goes out among the people, he does not see them the way Yitro sees them. When Moshe goes out among the Israelites, he sees a people that complains a lot, that breaks the rules a lot. Already, this is even before we've gotten to the golden calf, but they've already complained at the Dead Sea. They complain that there's no food. They complain that there's no water. They say things like, it would have been better had we died in Egypt than be taken out to die in the desert. Moshe does not see the people the way Yitro sees them. Yes?
I don't think there's nothing to indicate Jethro saw them. This is his idea about the kind of people you want. He didn't know what these people were like.
I think Yitro believes that they're there. And I would contend that that is what makes Yitro different. These are the eyes that Yitro brings that Moshe does not have. When Moshe looks at the people as a leader, he sees their flaws. He is judgmental as a leader, which I understand many leaders need to be. He sees their problems, he sees their flaws, he sees their shortcomings. Yitro is the guy in the story who always seems empowered or capable of finding the positive potential. Going back to his first encounter with Moshe, his daughters see somebody impulsive and scary. He sees a tzaddik. He sees somebody who will act righteously. He hears about what happens to the Jewish people, and he's not jealous. He sees it in a positive light. The eyes, going back to our original text, these are the eyes that Moshe knows he does not have. When he says to Yitro, you will be eyes for us, I believe he is saying, you're the one that comes from the outside, and you see the positives. You look at the Jewish people, and you don't see a people that's flawed and failing and complaining and making life difficult. You see a people whom God saved. You see a people that God did miracles for. You see a people rich with those who will fear God and pursue truth and hate corruption. Moshe is wise enough as a leader to understand that he's quite judgmental. He's wise enough to as a leader to understand his inclination is not to see the people as being capable. It's like what you all said. Many leaders operate the way, understandably. They have trouble trusting that those that they are leading will really get the job done. It seems to be part of his job. But that's the piece that Moshe, I think, knows that he is missing. He is missing the eyes of Yitro that can see the people in a totally different light. He doesn't see the people that are flawed. He doesn't see the people that sin. He doesn't see the people that struggle. He sees the remarkable people that God is taking care of in the desert. And that's the lens that Moshe believes he needs. That's the lens that he knows is missing. That's the lens that he knows his father-in-law viewed him. Before he was anything, his father-in-law viewed him in a way quite different than I'm assuming than how Moshe viewed himself. If we take a look, I just want to look at it, I think it's a very beautiful Hasidic text that addresses, I think, this idea in a very meaningful way. Rabbi Nachman of Braslav is talking about who is the ideal candidate as the Shaliach Tzibur, as the prayer leader. And he says the following: no, a person must judge everyone favorably, even one who is completely wicked. One must search and find a little goodness. For in this little, the other is not wicked. A person must do the same for oneself. Notice the link. Our capacity to judge others favorably, to find goodness in other people, Rabbi Nachman is suggesting is directly linked to our capacity to view ourselves favorably as well. Most people who are distant from God are distant because of a deep bitterness and sadness. These feelings result from the fact that people view themselves negatively and see the corruption of their own deeds. Every person knows the inadequacies of his heart and its pain, and because of this they grow depressed, and many of them despair entirely. Leaving out the theology of it, I don't want to debate where people are with their relationship with God. But here you have a Hasidic Rebbe saying something that I think is striking. What gets in our way, he is saying, is our lack of belief in ourselves. We are all painfully aware of our own weaknesses and shortcomings. Most of us are really good at it. Most of us, if I asked everybody in this room, list 20 things you want to improve about yourself, everybody here would write that list in no time. If I asked you to write a list of 20 things that you really love about yourself, some people here would really struggle. That's normal, but it's also a problem. Rabbi Nachman is saying that inability to judge ourselves favorably also plays into how we judge others negatively as well. It's a circle, it's a cycle of negative judgment that informs how we see other people and ultimately how we view ourselves, which prevents us, as someone here said before quite beautifully, from using our talents and our abilities and our gifts because we don't trust. Know that the one who can create melodies, which is a beautiful phrase, that is to say, one who can gather the good points found in every Jew, even the sinners, this is the one who can lead the prayers. The one who leads the prayers is called the messenger of the congregation, for he is indeed sent by the congregation. And then he gathers up all the good points that are found in each of the worshipers, and then all of these points will be gathered into him, and he will stand and pray with all this goodness. What a remarkable message. The Chazan, the Shaliach Tzibur, is not the one with the best voice. It's not the one who knows the most tunes. He's not the one that everybody respects or fears. The ideal leader of the service is the one who can view everybody else positively, who knows and sees the good points, the positives in all the people in the community. That's the one, Rabbi Nachman is telling us, who should be most empowered to lead. I think the message here that Moshe understood, and he wanted Yitro to be by his side, is to understand that good leadership is not only about judgment and criticism. It is not only about finding the flaws and the deficits and fixing them. But in fact, great leaders see greatness in those whom they lead. They have this magical ability to find the potential and the positives of the people around us and around them. I understand the need for the critical voice. I'm not positing here that we put on rose-colored glasses and pretend everything's wonderful. The critical voice, we need it. It's essential. It leads us to improve. It prods us to fix. It pushes us to do better. But for many of us, that critical voice perhaps has been overdeveloped, especially among the Jewish people. We have become masters at naming all the things that we do wrong. We have become adept at identifying all the ways in which we fail ourselves and one another. And the message here from Yitro, for me, is to try to see our people in a different light, at least some of the time. To identify the positives, to look at a people that has survived for thousands of years, to look at a people that is today studying Torah with one another, and to find those positives and be motivated by them, and to find the Yitro. All of us need a Yitro. We need it as individuals, we need it as a community, and we need it as a people. We need those voices that say, I am confident there are among you great men and great women. There are fine, ethical, God-fearing people of truth. They're around us all the time. We just have to choose to see them. We need that Yitro voice. Moshe understood it, and I believe we all, at an intuitive level, understand it as well. Rabbi Nachman's voice here, I think, is critical. The one who leads the prayers is the one who can sing the melody of the wonder and joy and accomplishment of the people in their community, the people among them. And this capacity is something that I think we need to develop and encourage, not at the expense of the critical voice. I promise you can all go home and be as judgmental and critical as you want. We're all very good at that. particularly with regards to ourselves. But understand that even Moshe, our greatest leader and our greatest teacher, understood that every time we're involved, as leaders or as members, we have this magical capacity to go to a place of criticism and negativity, which is not all bad. Moshe was a great leader. We need that voice to identify and fix the problems, but we need another voice as well. We need another lens as well that allows us to affirm the goodness, and I would say even greatness and wonder that we can find in the Jewish people. So may we all be blessed, in addition to that Moshe voice, but also finding the Yitro, either in ourselves or in those that are around us, or even more so, that we should be blessed to be the Yitro voice for others who are around us. Thank you very much. Questions, comments, rebuttals, all are welcome. Excuse me? Anybody? I'm just opening up any questions or comments that people want to make and rebuttals. Yes, sir.
So, has there been any discussion by scholars over the years that perhaps Yitro had some direct contact with God over time?
Well, it's very interesting. It's the whole issue of being a priest of Midian. So some commentaries understood as, well, he was actually an idolater, and by coming in contact with Moshe, he changes his spots. Others want to suggest that Yitro had a natural inclination to monotheism all on his own. We don't have any record. The text never records Yitro as a prophet. At the same time, I can't think of another human being who Moshe listens to. To the best of my knowledge, this is the only interaction where a human being gives Moshe advice, and he takes it, and he listens. Yes. I'm sorry, over here, you haven't spoken. Yeah.
From the beginning, he showed hospitality, which is like a number one thing. And I think maybe the people were afraid to confront Moses, but Jethro, he was willing to listen to Jethro because he was the only one who had nerve enough to step up and talk.
It's very possible. Also, if what I'm saying, that Moshe broadcasts this very demanding, critical voice, that's not a very approachable person. That's not a person you go give advice to. That's a person who you understandably are in awe of. And maybe Yitro, I knew you back when. He's not in awe of Moshe. Moshe is his son-in-law. And maybe that opens up a capacity in Moshe to listen or pay attention. Because maybe Moshe remembers Yitro as the one that saw something in him that he didn't see in himself. Yes?
Possible that as an idolater, Yitro was predisposed to see pieces of God in different forms, in different people, in different aspects.
I'm sure that's possible. It's the question of how does idolatry work and so on, but the idea that he's a man of great spiritual capacity, I think, is a justified take on his character because he's more alive or alert to it. Yes, sir.
Something that just jumped out at me in reading the text today again, in that Yitro was also wise enough to bring Moses' family there, and you see so many, there was always grumblings against Arafat because his wife and family had a nice life in Paris, and here the Jews are about to the desert and conquer Israel, and I think it was very important that Moses' family be with him and not comfortable in midnight.
Well, I don't know if it's comfortable, but I think that there's something, Moshe is an absolutist in a way. And I think in his mind, if I'm the leader of the people, and all of my energy, all of my time must be devoted to this project. And I think in his mind, there's probably no place for being a father and a husband. And Yitro is the great balancer, right? He comes along and says, you can do both. There's a different way to think about this. There's a different way to think about your role. It's all part of the same personality. Moshe is a man of absolutes. And as a man of absolutes, he needs that other balancing voice, and he knows it. The beautiful thing is he welcomes it and he knows it. He knows he's missing that piece, and he desperately wants to keep it. Yes, sir. Well, the rabbis assert, based on some material in the book of Chronicles in Devarim, that Yitro joins up, and his children end up as part of the Jewish people. But it's quite provocative that the text in Bamidbar and Numbers leaves the question open. Right? He refuses, Moshe pleads, the story ends. Almost inviting us to imagine different endings. You know, I wonder, as if Yitro joins, is there something about the Yitro voice that you need to be the outlier? That once you're fully in, it's very hard then to have that quote-unquote outsider's perspective. And maybe Yitro is saying the only way I can really help you is if I stay in Midian. If I join you, I won't really be able to help you anymore. But it's just a thought. The question, I think, though, is open. It's not around now. Aaron's rod, they say, you know, later on in the story, it's one of the ways that we prove that Aaron is destined for kahuna, for being the high priest, because it blossoms, and that's a whole separate story in Bamidbar. But Moshe's staff, I don't know. I'm sure there are midrashim about it, but I don't have it planted in my garden, if that was your question. Yes, sir. You know, in the Chumash, I'm inclined to think no. In the prophets, certain kings, the prophet often functions that way. Right? The prophet is often coming to the king and saying, you're screwing up and you're doing it wrong. The difference is typically when a prophet would come and tell the king you're doing it wrong, the king would hire a new prophet. Right? Hey, you're kind of negative. I like the guy over there who's predicting great things for my kingdom. You're fired. Which is part of the problem. That's Moshe's greatness. Moshe's greatness, I think, in the story is he can hear this other voice and want to have it around. That, I think, makes him incredibly, just remarkable in this story. Yes, sir.
Is Moshe
I know.
real? I mean, that's the other part. Is he a man, or is he just the voice of God that we hear? Because virtually never does anything wrong. He's supernatural.
Who, Moshe?
Yeah, so maybe Jethro is the voice of the people, going and saying, okay, you gave us the rules, as the communists say, now it's our turn to interpret.
Look, I can't comment whether Moshe is real. I think because Yitro is always identified as coming from the outside, the text wants to remind us he's not of the people. That I think if the people, there's this triangle here of Moshe, the people, and Yitro. The people seem to, they come to see Moshe as the Redeemer, the Savior, the leader. They don't seem to be, they can complain about him, but they don't seem to have a dialogue with him. Yitro, again, it seems to be the only one who can have a conversation with Moshe. And I think the fact that he's Yitro from Midian all the time, it's always emphasizing he's from Midian, I think is significant in the telling of the story. Yes, ma'am. We're off the camera, so I can leave. I can finally move around. I think, can you hear me now? I think in response to that, Moshe is not critical in the sense of being arrogant. He's deeply self-critical as well. Yeah, that's who he is.